He came back with their daughter. But no ring. The first time Lena saw Marcus after 14 months, he was standing outside the Willow Cafe on a Tuesday morning, holding their 3-year-old daughter like she weighed nothing. Like he hadn't disappeared, like he hadn't missed Ava's second birthday, her first day of preschool, and the night Lena sat alone on the kitchen floor crying because the dishwasher broke and she had no one to call. He looked the same. That was the worst part. Same jawline, same gray t-shirt stretched across the same broad shoulders, same way of standing like the whole sidewalk belonged to him. Lena had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her head. She'd been furious, then heartbroken, then furious again. She'd had entire arguments with him in the shower, brilliant, devastating things she would say. She had a whole speech. 2, actually. But the moment she stepped out of the Willow Cafe and saw him, every single word left her body. Lena. That was all he said. Just her name, like it was an apology and an explanation and a question all at once. Beside her, her mother, Sandra, made a sound that was not quite a word. It was the sound of a woman who had watched her daughter fall apart for 14 months and was now looking at the reason why. Sandra placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. Firm, warm. I'm here. Don't fall. What are you doing here? Lena finally managed. Marcus took one step forward, and Ava, sweet, oblivious Ava in her little pink dress, turned her head and looked at Lena with those enormous brown eyes and said, "Mommy." And just like that, Lena's carefully constructed walls developed a crack. She crossed the sidewalk and took her daughter from Marcus's arms, squeezing her tight, breathing in the smell of her hair, strawberry shampoo, the same kind Lena always used. He'd kept that up, at least. She pulled back and looked at Ava's face, checking her the way mothers do, cataloging every detail. "She's fine," Marcus said quietly. "She's been great." "I know she's been great," Lena said sharply. "She's my daughter. She's mine too." "Then maybe you should have acted like it a year and a half ago." Behind her, Sandra muttered something under her breath. Down the sidewalk, 2 women who had been walking by had slowed down, pretending to look at their phones. This was the kind of scene people noticed. The kind you remembered. A woman with pain written all over her face, an older woman radiating quiet fury, a man reaching out with open hands and no explanation good enough to bridge the distance between them. It had started, the way so many things start, with a plan that seemed reasonable at the time. Marcus had been offered a position in Seattle. Project manager for a construction firm, serious money, the kind of opportunity that didn't knock twice. They weren't married yet, though they'd talked about it. Lena was pregnant with Ava, 3 months along, and they were living together in their apartment in Columbus, Ohio, building something that felt solid, felt real. The plan was simple. Marcus would go ahead, get settled, find them a place, and Lena would join him after the baby came. 4 months, maybe 5. A temporary separation. People did it all the time. What nobody told them was that temporary had a way of becoming permanent when 2 people stopped fighting for it. The first 2 months were hard but manageable. Marcus called every night. They FaceTimed through Lena's growing belly, laughed about baby names, argued about whether to find out the gender. Lena had friends, her mother nearby, her job at the dental office where she'd worked for 6 years. Then Ava came. Early, by 3 weeks, a small pink screaming miracle, and Marcus wasn't there. He'd been on a job site in a dead zone. By the time he got the message and drove to the airport and caught the first available flight, Ava was 4 hours old and Lena had already done the hardest thing she'd ever done, with her mother holding one hand and a nurse she'd never met holding the other. Marcus cried when he finally held Ava. Genuinely cried, the ugly kind, shoulders shaking. And Lena had looked at him over their daughter's head and felt 2 completely opposite things at exactly the same time. Love so deep it scared her, and something else, something small and cold that had moved in during those 4 hours and wasn't going to leave easily. He stayed for 10 days. Then he went back to Seattle. The calls got shorter, then less frequent. He was overwhelmed with the project, he said. The timeline was brutal. He was exhausted. "You know I love you both, Lena. You know this is for us." By the time Ava was 8 months old, Marcus was calling every 3 days. By 10 months, it was once a week. By the time she turned 1, Lena was the one calling, and half the time he didn't pick up. She should have confronted it sooner. She knew that. But there was something humiliating about admitting that your relationship was dissolving while you were home alone with a baby learning to walk, while he was 3 time zones away living some version of his life that had slowly, quietly stopped including you. The last real conversation they had, Marcus said he needed time to figure things out. That he was confused. That he didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. Lena had sat with the phone in her hand for a long time after that. Then she'd put it down on the counter, walked to Ava's room, watched her sleeping daughter breathe in and out, and made a decision. She was done waiting. The months that followed were not easy, but they were clarifying. Lena stopped checking her phone every hour. She focused on Ava. She picked up extra hours at work. She started running again. Just 30 minutes in the mornings before her mother came over to watch the baby. And somewhere in those 30 minutes, moving through the quiet neighborhoods with her earbuds in and her breath coming hard, she started to feel like herself again. She didn't hate Marcus. She had tried to. She'd thought it would be easier if she could. But she knew him well enough to understand that what he had done wasn't cruelty. It was cowardice, which was somehow both better and worse. He did maintain contact with Ava. Lena had insisted on that, through her attorney, a formal arrangement that gave Marcus visitation on scheduled weeks, alternating holidays, and summer time. She hadn't fought him on it. Ava deserved a father, whatever Lena thought about him. Marcus had Ava for the month of July. That was the arrangement. He was supposed to drop her off on the 1st of August. Today was July 29th. You're 3 days early, Lena said. She was still holding Ava, who had now spotted a pigeon on the sidewalk and was losing her mind about it. I know. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. She recognized that gesture, the one that meant he was nervous. I needed to talk to you. You could have called. You wouldn't have answered. That was fair. She probably wouldn't have. Sandra had moved to stand beside Lena, not in front of her, not blocking, just present. Her mother had been doing that for 14 months. Just being there, quietly, steadily, without making it about herself. Lena didn't know how to say how much that had meant. She wasn't sure she'd ever find the words. What do you want, Marcus? She asked. He looked at her, really looked at her, the way people do when they've been rehearsing something for a long time and are finally about to say it. I made a mistake, he said. Not one mistake. 100 mistakes. I keep going over it and I know there isn't an excuse. I got scared and I ran and I kept running and by the time I stopped I didn't know how to come back. So you didn't. So I didn't. He nodded. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Missing her first year. Putting you through everything I put you through. He paused. I'm not here to ask you to take me back. I know I don't get to ask that. Lena said nothing. I'm in Columbus now, Marcus continued. Permanently. I took a position with Hartley and Sons. They've got a development out in Westerville. I signed a 2-year lease on an apartment 10 minutes from here. He glanced at Ava, who had transferred her pigeon obsession to a discarded coffee cup. I want to be here. For her. Every week, not every few months. Real involvement. Real presence. Lena looked down at her daughter. Ava had the coffee cup now and was examining it with the intense focus of a scientist studying a new specimen. That's what she deserves, Lena said carefully. I know. And you're saying this now because I've been saying it to myself for 6 months and I needed to say it to you. He took a breath. I'm not asking for anything, Lena. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did. And that I'm not going anywhere. Sandra, who had been silent this entire time with the discipline of someone who had a great deal to say and was choosing not to say it, made a small sound. Not quite a word. Somewhere between him and we'll see. Lena almost smiled. She didn't forgive him that day. Forgiveness wasn't something that happened on a sidewalk outside a cafe in 3 minutes. It was a long, private process, the kind that happened in small increments over time, usually without announcement. You didn't decide to forgive someone. You just noticed, one day, that the anger had been replaced by something quieter. But she did something that surprised her. She handed Ava back, not because she was letting him off the hook. Not because his speech had fixed anything. But because Ava was reaching for him. Arms out, no hesitation, the absolute trust of a child. And because the look on Marcus's face when he took her was the most honest thing Lena had seen in a long time. We'll talk, she said. Properly. Through the co-parenting app, or with the mediator if we need to. Whatever you want. It's not about what I want. It's about what works for Ava. He nodded. Sandra had finally moved. She stepped forward and looked at Marcus with the steady, measuring gaze of a woman who had raised her daughter alone through 3 difficult years in her own right and knew something about resilience. She's done everything right, Sandra said. Not accusatory, just fact. Everything you should have been there for, she did. By herself. Marcus held her gaze.